former high school teacher. He was a football coach, that this can help appeal to those independent swing state voters. But it is unprecedented, George, how all of this has played out. I was told that as of last night, according to sources, Vice President Harris still had not made her decision, and that her team was printing out signs with multiple different candidates on it, ready to go at any moment. This decision coming down to the wire. Her and her close team had been keeping this decision under lock and key. They wanted to avoid any leaks.
And let me bring in John Carl, our chief Washington correspondent. We know that the vice president met with three finalists on Sunday, not only Governor Walz, but also Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona.
Yeah, all three had strong arguments to make to be her running mate. All three under serious consideration until the very end. Tim Walz came through as somebody that, frankly, Kamala Harris was comfortable with. She actually had known Josh Shapiro much longer. The two of them, both former attorneys general. She had had a longer relationship with him, but people that I've spoken to said she really hit it off with Tim Walz. Both of them coming from states that are important. Pennsylvania, perhaps the most important battleground state, but Minnesota, a state that Democrats won last time and were counting on winning again, but where Donald Trump had shown strength. And more importantly, it's that whole area, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. The feeling was having a Midwest governor who had governed in a state that has significant pockets of Republican voters would be good for her. And if you look at his experience in Congress, George, he's a six-term member of the House before he ran for governor. His district is a district that Donald Trump carried quite handedly, a pretty conservative district. And as a member of Congress, he was viewed as a moderate Democrat. Now, he is seen, certainly among these three finalists, as the most progressive, the most liberal politically of the three finalists. But he does, have a record in Congress as a rather moderate Democrat representing a very moderate to conservative district in Minnesota.
And let me bring in Mary Bruce, our chief White House correspondent. Mary, that personal chemistry obviously paramount in the final decision. But in the last couple of weeks, Tim Walz also had been performing very well on the stump, and a lot of Democrats believe he lines up well with former President Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance.
Yeah, certainly, George, his Midwestern appeal, that plain-spoken way of talking that he has, he's a bit folksy. And I think that certainly appeals to a lot of voters, especially perhaps some Joe Biden supporters. He clearly showed that Kamala Harris believes that he is able to get out there on the stump, clearly articulate the case against Donald Trump. And he was creating a lot of buzz. Look, as Selena said, he coined that one-word takedown of the Trump-Vance team, just calling them weird. That is something that really gained a fair amount of traction. And so much of this decision, while yes, it is about, who can put what states in play, looking at the map, looking ahead to the future, it is also a decision that is simply about chemistry, camaraderie, compatibility. This is a job, of course, that Kamala Harris knows better than anyone else. And clearly, when it came down to it, she believes that she and Tim Walz make a good team here, that they are going to be able to not just govern well, but also win. All of these things factor into this decision. And of course, this is the most consequential decision of her career, and one that she has had to make at absolute warp speed. Just 16 days, George, 16 days. That's how long she has had to get used to being a candidate and to making this huge decision. And despite all of the decision-making, all of the vetting, when it comes down to it, this decision was up to Kamala Harris alone.
No question about that. Let's bring in Rachel Scott with the first reaction from the Trump campaign. Rachel?
Yeah, we're just getting word in from Donald Trump's campaign and also from the former president and his allies saying, quote, even worse than dangerously liberal and crooked Kamala Harris. That's the reaction to this news that we are now reporting, that Harris is picking Governor Tim Walz to be her running mate. Just yesterday, George, the former President Donald Trump was saying quite the opposite. In fact, during an interview, he said that whoever Harris chooses to be her running mate would be better than her. We know that the Trump campaign for days now now has really been trying to recalibrate their focus, trying to figure out what exactly their strategy is, because they wanted to run against President Joe Biden. Once President Joe Biden dropped out of the race, they now have tried to figure out what their new line of attack is, not only on Vice President Kamala Harris, but also now on someone who is going to be her running mate. When President Biden was still in the race, we know there was that phone call between Senator J.D. Vance and also Vice President Kamala Harris agreeing to meet again, once again, on the debate stage. We'll have to see what happens with a potential vice presidential debate and whether or not Governor Tim Walz will agree to debate Senator J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's running mate, George.
Okay, Rachel, thanks. Let's bring in our political director, Washington Bureau Chief Rick Klein. And Rick, as now that we know that it's going to be Walz, I imagine he's going to be on a continuous loop between the states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And we're seeing this at a time when Kamala Harris does have some momentum in those states.
George, the Harris campaign knows that if you win in the upper Midwest, you almost certainly win the election. And the movement that we've seen in the battleground state polling and the 538 polling average just since Joe Biden left the race is substantial, and it's particularly pronounced in those upper Midwest states, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania. Now, Tim Walz isn't from any of those states. Other finalists like Josh Shapiro were, but Walz is from just the other side of those states. He represents a part of the country, a redder part of a bluer state, as John Carl pointed out, that's critical. A lot of voters there are similar to the voters in Wisconsin and in Michigan and in Pennsylvania that will almost certainly decide the election. I think it's fair to assume that Governor Walz, after he's selected, will spend plenty of time in those battleground states, as will Vice President Harris herself. She's going to be in Pennsylvania later today. She's planning to hit all of those big battlegrounds in the next couple of days. You see that shift. All of those three states at the top, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, that by themselves almost certainly would make Vice President Harris President Harris, and her hope will be that Tim Walz helps deliver those states.
Doubling down on the Midwest. Okay, Rick Klein, thanks very much. One more time. Vice President Kamala Harris has picked Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, poised to pick Tim Walz as her running mate. We're going to return now to our regular programming. For many of you, that's Good Morning America. Of course, there's going to be much more tonight on World News Tonight, and you can get the latest anytime on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. Have a good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
All right, let's get ready for day 2 of our Deal That's Still Sizzling Savings event. Tori Johnson is here with convenient solutions for everyday problems, from the couch to the pickleball court. And I know everybody thinks I'm sitting, but I'm sitting for a reason.
For a reason, yes. You are